Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Triple Play Analytics. Before we hop into our subject today, I want to give a few shout-outs around the sports world. First, shout out to the Philadelphia 76ers. Well, you guys won your first series in a long time against the Miami Heat in 5 games. That being said, there was only one sweep in the NBA playoffs this time, in this first round. New Orleans sweeping Portland. That's pretty crazy. Utah beat Oklahoma City. Toronto beat Washington. Cleveland went 7 against Indiana. And then Boston snuck out against Milwaukee in 7. The Warriors beat the Spurs in 5. As a diehard Spurs fan, I'm glad that series was over in 5 and it didn't go longer. There just too much stuff happened to the team with Greg Popovich, Kawhi, and a lot of the players having a lot of non-related basketball tragedies. It just wasn't the Spurs season. That being said, Houston is currently up 1-0 against Utah. Golden State is 1-up against New Orleans. Philadelphia lost against Boston, and Toronto and Cleveland have not played a game yet. And in the Stanley Cup Playoffs, we have some pretty exciting news. The Vegas Golden Knights won their first series in a sweep of the Los Angeles Kings. The Sharks also swept the hated Anaheim Ducks. Winnipeg Jets and the Atlanta Thrashers franchise have won their first series 4-1 against the Minnesota Wild. And Toronto collapsed in Game 7 against Boston. No, it's not 2013, I believe, or 14. It's 2018. It happens. This Toronto can't play Game 7s. This can't. And then finally, let's round this off with baseball. Pirates rookie prospect pitcher Nick Kingham getting called up on April 29th against St. Louis, and he pitched a gem. He's the only pitcher since the 1960s to pitch 7 innings and allow 1 hit and have over 8 strikeouts. He's crazy. It was just crazy. I watched the game. Absolutely amazing. His line was he was 1-0, 7 innings pitched, 1 hit, 9 strikeouts on 98 pitches. 72 of them were strikes. The opponent's average on him was .045, 0.14 whip. Ground out to fly out was .33. I guess if you're going to look at the splits, it was just absolutely amazing. It was just crazy. Absolutely amazing. Yeah, the only hit came off of a right-handed pitcher, a right-handed batter. No lefty got a hit off of him. So, Nick Kingham, have yourself a day, and he's earned a spot in the Pirates rotation, and the Pirates are off to a great start. So the homer in me is happy. But now, let's move toward something a bit more exciting than regular season baseball. That is this trophy, the Stanley Cup, one of the hardest trophies to win in all of North American sports, and arguably in all sports internationally. This trophy is over 100 years old. It's absolutely amazing. And what we're talking about today is the Stanley Cup playoffs, not the finals, just the first 3 rounds, and rest and series length importance. So, what is rest? Well, rest, we have 4 types of rest. We have rest after the regular season, rest after the first round, rest after the second round, and rest after the third round. So allow me to explain what this rest is. Rest is a full day of rest. So let's say you play on, day 1, and you play on day 5. Well, days 2, 3, and 4 will count as rest days. Days 1 and days 5 do not, because you actively have a game there. Travel can actually be rest sometimes. You can have, morning skates and practices. Those still count as rest because you're not playing a full intensity game. So if you play on day 1 and day 5, you have 3 days of rest. So let's take a look at the after-season rest right here. So these are the percent chances of you winning a series when you have these days of rest. So something that's pretty crucial to look at is just looking at wins after 2 days of rest after the regular season versus losses. That's a 15.2% chance to win versus 6.52% chance to lose. That's a pretty big difference. That's almost 10%. So 2 days of rest is something a hockey player is used to. A hockey player is used to 2 days of rest because that's usually how long they get to travel from, let's say, from Boston to Tampa, or from Edmonton to Vancouver. Just like it's just a normal day of rest. You get usually longer days of rest when you have to travel from Philadelphia to Los Angeles, or Tampa to San Jose, or Tampa to Edmonton. That's usually like a 4 days of rest, just because of the travel necessary. But then you look at wins after 3 days of rest and losses after 3 days of rest. That's 23% versus 28%, and you're more likely to lose after 3 days of rest. That's some pretty interesting data. The big sign of this was in 2017, there were 6 teams that had 3 days of rest. Only 1 team won their playoff series. The other 5 lost. In 2016, 12 teams had 3 days of rest. It was an even split. 6 won, 6 lost. In 2015, 6 teams had 3 days of rest. 4 won and 2 lost. So if you add up the numbers, from 2017 to 2015, there were 24 teams that have 3 days of rest. 11 of them won, 13 of them lost. Thus, you have the numbers 23.9 and 28.3. Pretty crazy. But then, there's only 1 team ever that's had 5 days of rest in the past 3 seasons. They lost their series with 4 days of rest. 5 teams have won their series on 4 days of rest, and 6 have lost. So it looks like the only surefire, just based off of these numbers, these stats, disregarding who the players are, who the team is, you're more likely to win when you have 2 days of rest. Which seems counterintuitive. You'd think more rest a hockey player has, since they play a more physical demanding game, an endurance game. You'd think 3 days is more optimal than 2, but it really isn't. Because I believe after 3 days, you kind of get into a slouch mode. That last day is kind of like that slouchy day. It's you kind of just let everything settle down. You get out of your groove. But then with these days of rest also comes, series length. And so depending on how quickly you close out a series can also help you with your days of rest. Both of them are linked. So looking at round 1 series length, it's not very likely that you see a series sweep, let alone 2 in the same year. But it happened this year. Last year, there was, I believe, 1 series sweep last year in 2017. Allow me to check that. The round length, there were 2. My bad. Nashville won a sweep, and Anaheim won a sweep in 2017. And still, that's a 25% chance there's a sweep last year. And in total, out of over 3 years, it's a 12.5% chance. If you look at a 5-game series, there's a quarter percent chance. Well, I think finishing off a team in 5 games is most optimal, because usually that's when you get 2 days of rest. 6 games, 45% chance, or let's say 46% chance. You'll also get 2 days of rest usually. 7 games, you'll get maybe 1 or less. But then you have teams that finish out. The Penguins have won series in 5 and 6 games in the first round quite regularly against teams that should take 5 or 6 games, and the Penguins do it. But then let's look at the Capitals. The Capitals have a team that should be able to sweep the first round consistently for the past 3 years, easily for the past two, but they haven't. They haven't been able to. They take it to 5, 6, sometimes 7 games. Well, this is something for Caps fans to worry about because that decreases the days of rest to below 2 days of rest. Sometimes you can get 1 day of rest after the first round. That's, it seems very unfair, but that's just what happens. Boston is dealing with that right now. But, that's what happens. And after the series length, let's go after round 1. After round 1, what happens with rest? So, for the past 3 years, only 2 teams have had 1 day of rest, even split. One has won, one has lost. After 2 days, you actually are more likely to lose. After 3 days, you're also more likely to lose your series. 4 days, you're more likely to lose your series. But 5 days looks nice because every team in the past 3 years that's had 5 days of rest, and I believe that 5 days of rest is very similar to, I think, winning in 5 games, has won their series. 6 days of rest, also all 3 teams that have done it won their series. 7 days of rest, the one team that had it did it, and that was in 2015. So, it looks like the quicker you close out the first round, the more rest you get after the first round, the better. Because it allows the first round of the playoffs is usually you have the most rivalries. You get teams that fought so hard to get into the playoffs, and they're going to take out their frustrations on their opponent. You get the hardest hitting, you get the most demanding physically, that action that's hard. Well, after that, you're going to want days of rest. You're going to want it. And that will help your team. Then let's look after the second round. How long should the second round take? Well, sweeping in the second round, that's just plain rare. And then, after that, let's say you get into the, let's say, you get the 5 games, 18% chance. 6 games, 36% chance. 7 games, more likely, 45% chance. That just makes sense. You usually see 7 games because those are 2 teams that belong there and that are equally matched. But then let's look at rest after. After the second round. Well, 2 days of rest seems pretty good because you're back into the swing of things. 3 days of rest. Once again, just like right after the season, 3 days of rest doesn't look good. 4 is pretty simple. 8 and 9, I find those as outliers. That's Chicago and Anaheim in 2015. Very rarely do you get that because both those teams, I believe, swept their opponent and had to wait for the Eastern Conference teams to play. So I'm kind of want to throw the 8 and 9s out and focus on the 1, 2, 3, and 4. So 1 is pretty bad because you play a really tough game. You get 1 day to kind of catch your breath, and you're back playing another game. That's just hard. 2 days of rest, once again, the go-to. And this is almost like when you're back in the regular season, and you get back into the swing of things, except it's playoff. But then, let's go round 3. Round 3, game 6, game 7. Rarely will you see that go to 5 because that just means one team manhandled the other team. And you don't see it. 6 and 7 just makes sense to me. And then if we look at, rest, the data is a bit smaller here, much smaller data set. There isn't a clear indication of whether you want 3, 2, 5, but what I think what's the best option is 3 to 4 days of rest. I think that's the best case because it doesn't. That allows you to heal, but it also allows you to get a little scouting, and you kind of get that bodily jump, that excitement from being in the Stanley Cup playoffs and Stanley Cup finals. That one day after, let's say, usually it's 2 days is good, but you kind of get an extra boost of a day or that excitement of being there. So now you spread it to 3 days, and then very rarely 4 days kind of works out. So to recap, playoff series. After after the regular season, you want 2 days of rest. It's just your best option. It's shown here. It's just your best option. And for the first round series length, you want to close them out quick, 4-5 games. That's it. If you close them out in 6 or 7, you're really digging yourself a hole. So 5 games, I think, is the optimal one. And then after the first round, what you want is 2 days, maybe 3 days, 2, 3. Actually, my bad, incorrect. You want 4 or 5. You want 4 or 5 days of rest to kind of heal from the bumps and bruises you got from the first round. 4, 5, 6 days of rest. The more time you have to heal from the bumps and bruises and get a few players back from injury, the better. And then, round 2 length, if you can finish them off in 6, that's good. If you can do it in 5, that's even better. But 6 and 7, that's fine because you're now in the swing of things. You're used to the travel schedule. And then, after the second round, it seems like 2 days of rest once again regains its popularity and dominance in being the best you can have. And finally, the round 3, there's no escaping it. It's going to be a 6 or 7 game series. You can't argue that. And then after that, it's a toss-up. If you finish in 6, but the other tie goes to 7, well, you get 4 days of rest. If both teams win in 6, you get a mandatory 2 days of rest, sometimes even 3 days of rest. So it's it's hard to say after the third round because there's not enough data I collected. But the moral of the story is, other than after the first round, to win this piece of hardware, after the regular season, you want 2 days of rest. After the first round, you want, let's say, 5 days of rest. After the second round, you want 2 days of rest. After the third round, it doesn't matter. You're going to have nerves. You're going to be jumpy. You're just going to want to play in the Cup Finals. And, for series length, first round, close them out in 5. That's the optimal number. Second round, close them out in 6. Third round, if you can win it in 6, booyah. If you have to win it in 7, that's good enough. You're going to get at least 2 days of rest. And if you really, really are interested about the Stanley Cup Finals, past 3 years, all of them have gone to 6 games. Kind of seems like the bingo number. But 6 or 7 games. That's how long the Cup Finals should take. So, thank you very much for watching. I hope you guys like the analysis I did there. If you have any tips or any thoughts you had on this, just let me know. Tweet at me at @TryPlayAnalytic or at _SVish or Sasonkvish, or comment down below. Just let me know. I would really like to hear what you guys have to say and think, and get ready to see a bit more baseball stuff after the Stanley Cup Finals are done. The baseball season's heating up, which means my analysis on pitchers and batters is gonna get into full swing. We have a lot of nice young players kind of getting off to a hot start, and some unlikely guys, Charlie Morton, doing some crazy stuff. So thank you very much for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed, and have a good day.